Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar. It is about knowing what to look for as your loved ones age. I'm Paige Fairbanks-Gunn with Koelsch Senior Communities in Arizona. I've been working with seniors since 1997 and have worked with over 4,000 families. Koelsch Communities operates in 8 different states. We are family owned and operated since 1958, and we offer independent living, assisted living, memory care, respite, and daycare services. All of our assisted living and memory care communities have a licensed on-site nurse 24 hours a day, and Koelsch Communities offers exceptional care throughout, and we have many resources, including today's webinar. And then we have our national speaker, caregiving speaker, and consultant. She provides a path to relieve fear, anxiety, and overwhelm that family members experience when a loved one is diagnosed with dementia. She is the founder of Alzheimer's Family Consulting, a certified senior advisor, certified dementia practitioner, and is certified in dementia care. She's also the author of the highly rated It's Not That Simple, Helping Families Navigate the Alzheimer's Journey, which is based on Pam's 14-year dementia and Alzheimer's caregiving journey with her parents. So joining me today is Pam Ostrowski.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Paige. I appreciate it. So what we're going to talk about today, as Paige mentioned, is really knowing what to look for as our loved one's age. And that can be pretty complicated because I just got off doing a presentation with an organization back east, and we were talking about the fact that it's so easy to write off certain behaviors as dementia. Mm-hmm. And so we're taking a slightly different spin on it, but really talking about, well, what are you looking for? And it's not just about dementia. What if your loved one really is tired of cooking, or is tired of cleaning, or tired of maintaining a home, or wants to stay in their home, but hasn't quite figured out how would I make that transition? And what are those symptoms or signs of someone kind of sort of struggling? So why don't we kick off with so just so you guys know, on every one of these webinars, Paige and I get questions from families all around the country. And so what we do is we take those questions and we compartmentalize them into these webinar topics once we have enough of those questions. So if you do have a question that you'd like us to cover in a different webinar, just let us know by emailing us and letting us know what topic you would like us to cover in the future. Okay, so let's get started with our family questions.
Perfect. Okay. So our first question is, what types of observations are we talking about? I saw that my mom wasn't remembering certain tasks as easily. Should I be worried?
So we're getting a lot of, I think both of us are getting a lot of families, adult children coming in and saying, wow, I saw mom or dad over the holidays, or an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent. And, they didn't seem like their normal selves. It seems like something's changed. And so the next question is, well, what has changed? What is it you're observing? Because a lot of the holiday behaviors are a result of stress. So even if your loved one, you're the one who's doing all the cooking and your loved one is coming over, it can be as simple as they live at home alone and it's nice and quiet. And then they go to your house and you've invited the entire family and then some, and there's 15 or 20 people. I knew somebody who had like 28 people coming to the holiday dinner. And so if you think about the difference in the noise level, the stimulation level, as we age, our brains naturally shrink. We do have memory issues, but memory is different than cognitive impairment. So let me explain. When we talk about activities of daily living, you'll see that abbreviated as ADLs. And what that means is the ability to cook for yourself, to brush your teeth, to take a shower, so personal hygiene, know when to get enough sleep, medication management, all of those things that basically we do every single day and we really don't think about it. But at some point, we can, and not everyone encounters this, but for those people who need a little bit of help or a lot of help, we want to be able to offer them support, which is not to say that we need to take over their lives and tell them what they need to do, because that will not go over well. And we're going to talk a bit about that later. So the type of observations that we're really looking at are more about, does the refrigerator, if your loved one is living alone, checking the refrigerator to see if there's food in it. And then what condition is the food in? Is it past its expiration date? My dad used to leave raspberries. He asked for raspberries specifically. So I went and bought them. I said, I'm putting them in the refrigerator so they'll last longer. He totally forgot about it. Never opened the refrigerator in the 2 weeks since the time I put them in the refrigerator. And the community had to throw them out. And he's like, you didn't bring me raspberries. And so he had vascular dementia. So a lot of denial of things that really had happened. So when we think about that, we're looking for food expiration dates. We're looking for whether there's food in there at all, in the refrigerator or in the cabinets at all. What kind of food? If it's sugary things or Doritos or something like that. When someone lives alone, they typically have a poorer diet than when they are living with someone. So if your parents, if one of them passes away, the other one's by themselves, their nutrition habits and their nutritional needs are usually less addressed, I will say. So they're not going to eat as healthfully as they might have when they had someone holding them accountable or someone they needed to take care of, because it's just them. And same with hydration, a lot less drinking of fluids. And I always recommend 48 ounces as a minimum. And a lot of people don't walk around with a glass of water. And the difference then is that the brain actually shrinks in on itself when it's dehydrated. So you're looking for signs of dehydration, poor nutrition, weight gain or weight loss. If they, from a memory perspective, are they struggling with, they're asking the same question repeatedly? Are they having mobility issues, right? Because, there can be lots of reasons for that. One of them is medication. Check their medications and count the pills, because sometimes it's easy to forget whether you've taken your medication or not. Even a cognitively capable person can have that problem. So looking at those types of things will give you a bit more insight into whether, what condition, I should say, what condition they're in. And, frankly, I think it's a good idea to create a log and write this down so that you can say, all right, medication management, right number of pills and everything, the food in the refrigerator looks good, looks like they're eating healthfully. Mobility, is okay, but, they're in a single story home, so it's not a big deal. So you can kind of go through that list and then write the date. And then, 6 months later, you can check in and see, and against those criteria and see if anything's changed. So those are the things that, one, don't jump to conclusions that they have dementia just because they're stressed out because of the holidays and the amount of noise and the stimulation and the overwhelm. That's an unfair situation to evaluate someone's cognitive health. You want to get them like now when they've kind of recovered from that and they, kind of feel like they're normal. So Paige, what do you hear from families? What is it that, you've seen from observations of what might happen over the holidays?
Over the holidays, that's definitely something that brings up a lot of questions, because there's oftentimes many children are out of town. I was one of those out of towners. My dad lived 1,400 miles away, and they do start to see the deficiencies, and that's where the concern comes in is, the meals, the expiration of the food. Are they capable of cooking nutritional meals? Is their mobility starting to decrease, and maybe there's been some falls in the home? That's typically where there's been a fall, a non-injury fall, but yet that's something to be alarmed about, is when the falls do start to happen. That brings a big concern to families at that time, and I think it is something that they need to be worried about. I think that's the question, is they need to be worried and start looking at, and I think having that parent diary and keeping notes and track of dates is going to give you a good understanding of what's been happening over the course of time, so you really can be prepared for things. We do have a question, so I want to make sure we get to questions. Laura has a question. It says, I visit my mom every Saturday, taking her out to lunch. It seems if I visit more often, then she wants me to take her back to her house. How do I balance interactions and keep her happy?
So there's a few questions that I have with that one is you take her out to lunch on a Saturday. It seems if I visit more often. So are you visiting her in her home? It sounds like not. So the second visit, let's say, then she wants me to take her back home to her house. So she doesn't want to go out to lunch with you twice a week is what I'm gathering from that. How do I balance that? So it depends. It could be where you're taking her, first of all, because restaurants tend to be really loud and there's a lot of stimulation. Yeah. And so even with my hearing, I look for corners and I ask for booths because they're taller and not near the kitchen, because that way the stimulation is less. If she wears hearing aids, those just amplify all the noise. And then, a lot of the restaurants now don't have any noise buffering, and they're really tall ceilings and they echo, and it could be too much. So you maybe pick a place that's quieter, that's smaller, more intimate, where you can request a seat someplace where it's quieter. The other thing is, if she wants to go back home, like what's the trigger? What is it that she says, I want to go back home? One of the reasons I ask that is that sometimes it's too social. So if she's having some cognitive impairment issues, then she doesn't want anyone to see her fail, right? She doesn't want to make a mistake. So she might be able to put on her best act for you once a week. Like with my mom, I would say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing wonderful. How are you? And, oh, I'm doing great, Mom. This happened or that happened. And then, hey, did you guys go out to lunch? Oh, we sure did. Where did you go? Oh, the same old place. You had the same old thing. They usually, people with dementia tend to have like a dozen go-to phrases. And as a result, I fell for it until I realized, so when you say the same old thing, what did you have? I don't answer the question for her by saying, did you have your salmon? Because then I'm leading her on, right? And she'll say, oh, yes, it was wonderful. So instead, asking, because they're avoiding you knowing how they really are doing. So what I would suggest from a balance perspective, the second visit can be in her home where she's comfortable. That also eliminates her ability to say she wants to go home. So bring over some,
to her,
a yummy sandwich or, some hot coffee. I used to bring my mom Dunkin' Donuts coffee and blueberry muffins, and she loved that. And it was a treat. And then she felt comfortable. So you can start to notice how she's behaving differently between the restaurant and at home, and you'll be able to make some better observations. So what's your thought, Paige?
Well, and I know Laura, so I know mom's in memory.
Okay.
Mom is in a memory care setting. So
Okay.
And Laura, I love that you joined these. Thank you for coming. My suggestion would be is to absolutely try bringing lunch into her, and maybe going into the private area where it's just the two of you having a nice daughter and mother lunch, and see how that interaction goes afterwards, and the staff can observe and give feedback after that. I think sometimes when someone is in memory care, they don't always do really well when you take them out.
Especially over time, if they've been in
Yes.
memory care, this is their safe place.
Yes.
You take them out to a safe place, to another place too often, then it becomes too much. So yeah, you just change up the way that you interact with her. And I don't know how close you are with your mom, Laura, but if you wanted to visit more often, make the visits shorter. Stop by with a cup of coffee and then leave. I mean, I used to go at snack time because they have really good snacks at Rock Creek and at Silver Creek and Copper Creek. So go at snack time. I would bring a Dunkin' Donuts coffee And a little funny story, I would bring a large coffee, and then I would bring a smaller cup, and then I would pour half of my coffee into her
Sure.
cup. So I walked away to get some snacks, and I see her grab my big coffee, and she's about to drink my large coffee rather than her small coffee. So, it's those kinds of things, just if you want to see her more often, then make them shorter visits. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
So I have a question for you, Paige.
All right.
What concerns do you hear from families who come in to look at, and I know this is going to be 3 different answers.
Yeah.
When they come in to look at independent living versus assisted living versus memory care, what are you hearing from those, say, their adult children? As far as what are they saying are their biggest issues or concerns?
Or concerns. And yes, that's kind of a 3-part question, but 3-part answer. Because we have different levels of care, independent, assisted, and memory care, and it does look different. So for independent living, just kind of briefly, a lot of it is they're not eating well. Or, mom's house is becoming, it's not as clean, and maybe they're asking the housekeeper to not be there. They're turning away services that are coming into the home. That's been a huge one. But the meals are usually the big one: loneliness and transportation.
Oh, those are great.
Yeah, those are the 3 big ones
living.
for independent living. For assisted living, that's going to look a little bit different because it's really identified. They're starting to see the care deficiencies are identified, which mom's personal hygiene is really not doing well. We're seeing more incontinence in the home, and she's having a difficult time being able to manage it. And the next big thing is medications. Medication. Those are the 3 big ones for assisted living. And then also falls are always implemented into that as well, just because there's usually a trip and fall, or they've had a slip and bump off of an area rug or a bathroom rug or something. And that's where we come in and say, we got to get rid of the tripping hazards in the home, and what does that look like? But those are the big 3 things there. And then memory care is really all of the above. And then also they're not able to alone anymore. There's safety issues going on. I have somebody that just moved into one of our communities, and mom's hallucinating at night, and she's up at night, and she's wandered out of the house and knocked on the neighbor's door because she's looking for the house key. Those are very scary situations if nobody is there with them during those times. So it really boils down to a lot of safety, and then also wandering. If they're wandering, very confused, or they're and a lot of hallucinating going on, that's usually where the big concern lies with memory care. So.
Yeah, no, those are all really good, and that's a great summary too. I really like that we have that recorded so I can use it. For me, the situation we had was that dad was independent and mom was assisted, very close to memory care. Actually, she did not do well on the mini memory state exam, but because she was living with my father, it was okay. And so the challenge for her and him, he thought he was fine. And so to your point, it's really supporting what you've said, is I said, Dad, I think it's time we talk about this. And he's like, well, when we're ready. And I said, and when would that be? And he's like, well, we've got to get rid of a bunch of stuff, and we have to do all these delay tactics. And I said, okay, so let me get up and take a look in the refrigerator. And he had White Castle frozen burgers. He had French fries, no frozen vegetables, by the way. And that was the freezer. And then in the refrigerator was milk for sugary cereal, and no salads, vegetables, anything like that. And I said, and soup in the cabinet. And I said, Mom just got through colon cancer surgery, and she needs fiber to help things move. And there's nothing here that has fiber, and none of it is healthy for either one of you. And I said, so either we bring in Meals for Wheels, or we have to find a way to fix the food solution. And then I said, and what about, is mom taking her medications? And he said, well, she told me that she didn't want me helping her do that. And I said, so that makes sense because you're her spouse. Most spouses don't like the other one telling them what to do, and they sure as heck don't want their adult children telling them what to do.
Yeah.
But what's surprising is a caregiver can say, here you go, here's a cup of water, and they'll take them like with no problem whatsoever.
Yep.
It's because there's no relationship there. I don't know who you are. You just gave me the medication. Okay, I'll take it. But don't tell me what to do, daughter, son, or husband. So it's an interesting dynamic. And so medication management and food were my parents' biggest issues. And so they moved in and they did well. But one of the things that as a family member concern was making sure that they integrated well. So what I tried to get my dad to do is he used to play pool and he liked baseball. So I, told the executive director and the activities director, I said, can you find somebody in this group that likes baseball? Can we sit them at dinner or lunch or some meal so that they can have that conversation? Because my concern is that dad, who is a little home buddy, would sit in the 2-bedroom apartment with mom and they would never see anybody except at meals. And so the fact that they were isolating in their condo, and then I didn't want that behavior to continue, which is another reason why I had that conversation with assisted living. Now he could be independent and she could be assisted. She could be memory care because they basically, it was one building and they just provided different levels of service depending on the individual, which I loved. So those were my concerns as a family member. It's a matter of watching the story evolve as to what your concerns are, right? So I'm sure you've seen that, Paige.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so I have one for you, Pam. Okay. I did notice some changes from our last holiday get together. How do I bring those up to my parents without upsetting them?
Good luck. No.
Yeah, this is a toughie.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. So there's a couple things, and I actually have a cheat sheet for this. If anybody's interested, just email me at pam@itsnotthatsimple.com and I will send it to you. But it's about having the conversation staged. Actually, we did a webinar on this. So we can send that to you as well. I can send you the link to the page where the webinar is so you can watch it. But it's about having short conversations and make them casual. So I'm going to help you learn something from my mistakes. Boy, and I made a ton of them, I'll just say, and that's why I wrote my book. It's Not That Simple, Helping Families Navigate the Alzheimer's Journey, is because I was like, I don't want anybody else to have the same journey I did because I screwed up a lot. And so here's a chance for you to be talking with your loved one and be able to say, so what's your later in life plan? Like, what are you thinking of if you need more help? And see what the response is. Now, in these conversations, you cannot judge. You cannot say anything in response. You can say that's interesting, but you cannot say, well, mom, I think you're wrong. Or dad, you need to do this. And that's exactly what I did. That's how I know it's wrong. And so being able to say, we should probably, and they are not going to want to talk about it because think about it. What you're talking about is them losing independence, them getting older to the point where it's scary, right? Like my mom knew that she was having memory issues and task issues, and she was scared. And my dad was even more scared because this was the love of his life. And she's failing, and that was not part of their plan. He was supposed to be sick. He was the one that she was going to take care of. And now she's not able to do that anymore. So they were both very fearful. And so tread lightly, be kind, be compassionate. And that's why the conversations need to be short. I mean, to the point of 15 minutes, and then bring it up again in a week or two and say, I was looking in the fridge and it doesn't look like you guys are eating very well. Let me bring some stuff over. So you start that way and then see if they're eating it. And then every time that you interact with them, you're going to make observations and casually mention them, like, wow, I had a meal over at the park at Copper Creek, and it was phenomenal. We had, a filet and wonderful scalloped potatoes with green beans. And wow, what do you have? Frozen dinners. Yeah. So I'm just saying that maybe we should go have dinner over there. And that's another way to introduce them to the community. And Paige, I'm sure you have, you're going to talk a bit about how we can gently introduce them to the community in order to help them be less afraid. So understand this is a very fearful conversation, not because they're thinking you're putting them in a home, because a nursing home is not what any of this is, right? A nursing home is for 24/7 skilled nursing, where you've got serious medical issues and potentially some memory issues, cognitive issues as well. So we're putting you into a senior living community that provides for all of your needs, and they may pick out the needs that they don't have. So just remember that all of their reaction is coming from fear, and we do not respond to fear by being angry or frustrated. We just say, okay, well, I understand where you're coming from, because that's compassionate. So how about you, Paige?
It comes from a very anxious place. They're very anxious, and I think definitely, like you said, small doses, and just validate their feelings.
Yes.
If you start to see, deficiencies that are going on and things that they need help with, start to gently start offering, to do some of those things to help them. And whether it be yourself or, in the home, such as home care, but then there's also the other side of the coin, where a senior living community. And like you said, people don't pass away in a nursing home anymore. Senior living communities are very vibrant and active and social and independent. They're still doing all the things they want to do independently. There's just fun involved, and socialization and engagement, and resources at your fingertips all around. So I think that, with the independent living, it's what we often find. I'm dealing with this with my aunt, for example. I mean, my aunt is 70, she's going to be 76, and she's in Kansas, and she's going to come do a trial stay in Arizona, and I'm trying to get her to move here. And so, we're going to do a trial stay to kind of try before you buy for 3 days. And her goal is to come this way, but she is still kind of dragging her feet, because it's the fear of the unknown. And it's,
and the fear of aging.
And the fear of aging. But I think that once she comes here, she's toured before, but once someone comes in and they enjoy a meal, or they're coming to, a fun Caribbean themed dinner, or they're coming to a casino night or something like that, they start to see, hey, this could be really fun, and I might be able to meet some people here. I think another thing that they're really resistant to is, how am I going to deal with 3,000 square foot of stuff in my home for 30 years? Oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? But that's, again, where we can come in, and, this is what we do all the time. We have resources from A to Z, and we can help eliminate the fear and anxiety of that. So in small doses, absolutely, but also validate their feelings, and find out what their feelings are about it when you ask them.
And I think that was my biggest mistake, is I should have said, I understand, or been more compassionate during the conversation. I pretty much just outlined, boom, 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 boom. Here's the reasons why you need to move. A little bit autocratic, let's put it that way. They want to feel heard first.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
So, and I actually, Kat, if you email me, I think it was Kat. No, who was it who asked for the email? Yeah, it was Kat. Yeah, just email me and I'll send you the link. But one of the big challenges with that is that hesitation and that fear. So on that topic, the follow-on question was, what's the best way to broach the topic of moving to senior living? What do you tell families who are like, okay, we think this is a great place. We'd like to bring mom and dad over. How do we bring it up?
Yeah. And again, small doses. You know, if somebody comes to us and they're really struggling with, you know, trying to bring someone here, I've had a really difficult situation actually in our independent living, but I'll tell you how this all went. Quickly, Reader's Digest. Mom and son wanted mom to be somewhere in an independent living where it's social, and there were things happening, you know, not taking the medications. She was not eating in her home. There was expired food. It was starting to rot. There were all these things, you know, personal hygiene was all going down the toilet. But as stubborn as you can imagine, German woman, in her 90s, and you weren't going to pull her out of that house until she came out in a body bag. So, and that's what she would say.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was really sad because she had always been a hermit most of her life, and she had lost her husband. She had been single for 40 years, and you know, this was a tough one. So I got one of my partners with me, and we went over and did a home visit, and you know, we just kind of strategized that we're going to come in and do a 2-week trial stay, you know, come in for 2 weeks and just kind of try before you buy, but it's going to take much longer for her because, you know, she can't do the couple days. So
Mhm.
anyways, long story short, you know, she had a couple bumpy weeks. 2 weeks turned into, then we turned it into 6 weeks. And you know, in all fairness to her, we really had to have we had to have the sit down conversation, and the kids were like, you know what? I got to tell mom she can't go back home. She cannot go back home because of these reasons why, and we're fearful of her, you know, dying in that home alone, and she's not getting what she needs. So we all got together as a family, and we sat down and really kind of had a little bit of an intervention with her, and just supported the kids, but also helped just talk about the aging process and how, you know, she is older, and it's nobody's fault. It's not her fault. It's nobody's fault. Nobody's doing anything to her. We want to help her. And this was literally before Christmas. And I tell you what, it sunk in. And I said, let us help you. We want you to, you know, we got her involved in smaller little groups, and she is flourishing in the community since we told her. We said we got to tell her before the holidays so she doesn't think she's going to go home. So
Right.
it really turned out to be a success story, and she's doing well. And she's like, can I at least go to my house and pick out some items from my house? And that's already happened. So she's brought her own furniture here, and it ended up going well. But this was a tough one. I tell you,
Yeah.
it was a tough one, but it turned out to be really well. These don't always happen this way. But that was one circumstance. But small, you know, small doses, and just letting them know this is out of the kindness of the family's heart,
Mhm.
and that we want to help you and keep you healthy because it's lonely, and you know, we're going to keep you independent. You know, she's still very independent. She's actually more independent, and she's more lively now than ever because the meals are there. She's got someone coming in and reminding her of her medications. She's got, you know, small group socializations going on. So it really has turned out to be a success story. And those are the stories I love.
Yeah, that is a great story. And I typically, to broach the topic, say, you know, what if? And you can finish
Yes.
that sentence however you want, which would be, what if we tried to see what it would be like? You don't have to make a commitment. So that's where the trial period of that Koelsch offers, and it's generous. You know, I mean, you'd said, is it 2 to 3 days
Yeah,
complimentary to try
we
to?
do a trial before you buy in our independent
Yeah.
living, where
Yeah.
they can come in, and my aunt's coming for 3 days in March.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
So just to clarify, it's not, you're not buying anything. You're just setting,
no.
it's a month to month, correct?
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of, we
okay.
just kind of call it the try before you
Yeah. I
commit.
just
And
think
it
that
is
if
month
I
to
were to say
month.
that to my dad, he would be confused. So that's
Oh
why I like
yeah,
trial period.
we call it
But
trial stay,
yeah,
a
and
trial stay.
and it's an apartment too. That
Mhm.
was the other wording. So it's, to me, what my piece of advice when you broach the topic is to not call it senior living. Don't call it um assisted living, God forbid. Uh and it's more about, you're going to move to an apartment, so we're going to downsize a little bit. And to your point, you know, helping them pick what they want most. And that is really insurmountable. When someone has a 3,000 square foot home, it's like all my stuff won't fit in there. And you're like, yeah, you're right. And separating emotionally from the furniture and from whatever it is that they like to have, like looking out on a backyard or whatever. But then what I asked my dad was, if she won't take her medications for you and you can't feed her properly, how do you think this is going to end and when? Because it's going to happen much faster the way things are happening now than the way they would if you guys, if you would just let go and let's try this. And he eventually relinquished, obviously. But it took him time. That's the other thing. You broach the topic, but then you give them time. You can't just say, well, so what do you think? You know, let's just go over to Koelsch right now and we'll go do a trial. And that's just too quickly. They need time to separate themselves from their things. They need time to accept and the intervention that you did, which is, look, we can't stop the aging process, but we do want you to have the best life possible, the life that you earned and deserve. Because the next thing was, Dad was like, well, we already own our condo. Why would we give money away on an apartment? And I said, because it's not just an apartment, it's a docked luxury cruise liner. You've got people coming in playing piano while you're having a fine dining meal, and you're able to play pool and beat your daughter at it every time. And you're able to, engage with others and watch the baseball game with them. And you're less isolated, and you're doing things that they go out on outings and go look at Christmas lights. And there's all these different things that can happen. And that's not happening here. And so they were kind of hermitized. And so the socialization stuff did not appeal to them. And so I had to go more for mom's well-being, because I knew that would pull at his heartstrings. So you have to find what they're attached to most. Are they attached to a lifestyle? Are they attached to each other, in my case? What is it that's most important to them, and then leverage whatever that is. Okay, what's the next one?
Okay. The next one is, okay, this one's a good one. What about mobility issues and driving?
So this turned into a really big issue. So my dad had knee replacements on both of his knees, but he still wasn't very stable. I mean, he wasn't shuffling, but he wasn't a fast walker, let's put it that way. And so then he would, while living, mom could come with him, but sometimes he would go grocery shopping without her, and the activities would preoccupy mom. So he would go shopping, and he said basically, his response to this whole thing was, I'm fine driving. Now, he was at the time right around 90 years old, which is disturbing anyway, because as we get older, our peripheral vision narrows significantly. So, and he had arthritis in his neck, so he wasn't going to turn very far to be able to see. And so I was worried about that, but I couldn't bring that up, because you can't say you need to stop driving. You need, you can't see. So the can'ts and the needs should be totally eliminated from your vocabulary. And instead, what happened, because sometimes you just have to wait for something to happen. I know that's really, really hard, but sometimes as an adult child that went through this, I had to sit back and go, something's going to have to happen. Well, I got the call from the community saying, we're going to call the sheriff's posse. He had to check, and he hated this. He wanted to go to the grocery store, and he wanted to be able to drive himself, and he fell asleep in the car in the parking lot at Safeway. And so we didn't know that. So the community's like, we're going to get the sheriff's posse and look for his car, because he had to sign out and he didn't sign back in. That was an unusual time to be away. And I raced over there, and by the time I got there, because I was 30 minutes away, one of the caregivers who was ex-military. My dad was a retired lieutenant colonel, so he knew how to handle it. So he's a caregiver, but ex-military. My dad had actually woken up and then drove the car to the receiving dock of the community instead of driving to the next driveway and parking in the carport. So he found the car, the caregiver found the car, and he didn't want to startle my dad because he'd fallen asleep again. So he had vascular dementia, which means that he's going to sleep a lot more because he's not getting enough oxygen to his brain. So, that was, long story short, or short story long. It was an experience where we had to talk about, Dad, I'm going to take the car. You can keep the keys, because he had an obsession with putting keys, having keys to the door, keys to the car, keys to this, keys to that. And so I said, you can keep your keys, but I'm going to take the car, because I said, here's the story. Because he would think the worst. He had a pessimistic attitude about things. And I said, here's a story. You tell me what you think of it. So what if you get a flat tire? That's a pretty common thing to get, right? So you get a flat tire, and somebody sees you out on the road, and you, of course, have your cane with you because of your knees, and you're going to try to change a flat tire. And I said, what do you think a not so nice person's going to think? There's a free car. And I said, you're going to get the tire iron out, and that dude's going to grab it and hit you over the head and take your car. I said, you are vulnerable. You're 90. You're not mobile. You're not going to chase after him. So, and he's like, well, I didn't think about that. And I said, and think of how devastating that would be for mom. See, I could always loop mom's well-being into the story to get him to do something. So yeah, I mean, these are big deals. And so that's why I do, consulting with my caregiver clients, because wording for each individual is very different based on what their emotional hooks are, and making sure that we know not to say you can't, point out all the things that are wrong with them, or what that we see as wrong with them, I think is a better way to put it, because they don't think there's anything wrong with them, and maybe there isn't, but there's that disparity between our viewpoints, right? So that would be my thought. How about you on mobility and driving?
Mobility and driving scare me big time. My dad was still driving until he was before he was in the hospital, and he was gone a month later. But I was also 1,400 miles away. But I work with in my memory cafe group on another side of things. Now, if they don't have dementia and they're driving, get in the car with them. Do you feel safe with them in the car? If you don't, they shouldn't be driving. Period. Got it. That's a good answer. Just get in there, and you know what, Dad, I'm going to have you drive me around, or Mom, I'm going to have you drive me around. And if you're scared, they shouldn't be driving. But it makes it worse if they have a diagnosis of dementia. So if you've got MCI, mild cognitive impairment, or any sort of diagnosis of any sort of dementia, and they are driving, and if they get into an accident, there can be big trouble, liability issues, not only just to the fact that they could kill themselves or kill somebody else. It gets to be extremely scary, the driving. And like Pam said, you got to just take the car away. And if they have dementia, there are other ways around how to deal with that. Right. The car's in the shop, or we're getting it painted, and then we implement other things to redirect and switch gears to get them off the car. So, but it is very scary. So if there's mobility issues, and if they're on a walker, and having difficulties walking with a walker, or if they're in a scooter and driving, I challenge, get in the car and drive with them.
Yeah. And to your point about if they can't drive, you can always take advantage of the doctor, and the doctor will write a note saying this person shouldn't drive. Or what one of my clients did is they took their loved one to the DMV.
You can file a report with the DMV.
Mm-hmm. Well, they went to the DMV and they had to take a test, right? And the loved one passed the written test, but didn't pass the driving test. And you can request that at any point in time. So, you know, there's ways around it. It depends on how much trouble you have and where your loved one is at in this whole journey. So
Yeah,
it's
and
a
you have to be
good,
very
good.
specific on asking and requesting those tests, because I tell you what, sometimes the DMV, they'll give somebody, I mean, 100 years old, a driver's license, which is just insane to me. But also too, hey, look at the 100-year-old. I just went to a lady's birthday 2 weeks ago, and she's 100, and I bet she probably still could drive, and she's as smart as a whip. So it just depends on the circumstances. So
Exactly.
just
Very
don't know.
individual.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm
exactly.
going to skip a couple of questions because I want to make sure that we get these two answered.
Okay.
We touched on it, but this wasn't available to my parents, and I'm so glad that Koelsch is offering it now. But could you talk a bit more about, so we talked a bit about the trial stay for senior living,
Yes.
and then what is respite stay for memory care? Because I know there's a lot of families out there who are scared of memory care because of the varying functioning of residents. And if they make the commitment, they're paying the community fee. And how does all that work from a logistics?
So we try to be extremely flexible. You know, when families are in crisis, and usually when they come to us for assisted living, especially with memory care, not always, but you know, 80% of the time it's go mode. It's crisis, and we need to do something yesterday. Oftentimes they're found very overwhelmed with the decision making on, oh my gosh, you know, I haven't had time to look, and we didn't prepare for this, and they didn't know. So we like to be able to, you know what, hey, we'll bring your mom in for, you know, 2 weeks. So just to clarify, what respite stay term stands and what that means is anything under 30 days is a respite stay. So it's a short-term stay. We do anywhere from a week. Now, many communities do not do, they do a minimum of 30 days. And so we'll do just a week. It's not always the best for the resident that is coming in, your loved one, but it's great for you. But we work with you. So the respite stay trial is basically just if you haven't made a decision, or you are on the fence about making a decision and you want to do a trial stay, we absolutely will welcome a respite stay. And sometimes it's a nice way that families are so on the fence and they're just, I can't do this long term. Well, go ahead and bring them in for, you know, 2 weeks. We'll reevaluate. We'll sit down, and the care team will reevaluate and give the observations and good feedback on how mom or dad is doing, and let you know how they're doing in the community so you can make a decision. And we'll be available, you know, with you through the whole steps of the way. We'll keep them, you know, very informed of what's going on, and really just make them feel comfortable. I have an example, and we do this in assisted living and also in memory care. So we'll do as you know, we'll do a minimum of a week. But I have a good quick story that I'll tell you. I had a lady that came in yesterday in one of our communities, and I sat down and toured with her, and she has mom, and mom is pretty independent for the most part. She has vascular dementia, but pretty independent and still doing things. And the daughter's really capable of being able to care for her. But the daughter is coming into her extremely busy season, and she works at one of the big festivals here in Arizona, and it goes on for 2 months. And she's a big part of it. So she's like, you know, I can't, mom got sick last week, and you know, I got to deal with this. I've got work going on. It's too stressful. And I said, you know what do you need? And she said, I need 2 months. Can I just bring mom in for 2 months? I said, absolutely. Absolutely, you can. So we've set up, she's going to come in next week so she can start the festival and she can deal with her work and not have to deal with this. And she said, you know what? Mom's been so lonely. And if mom does well in 2 months, you know, maybe we'll think about leaving. You know, maybe she might stay and like it. And we may leave her there. And I said, this is a great opportunity for you to see how mom's going to do. And then that way you can focus on you and your work and things that you and your husband love to do. It's work and play. And mom's going to get the socialization, and you don't have to stress about this. So we really work on a case-by-case situation, and it's really about what does the family need? What are your stressors? What's going on that we can help you?
And I think that's fantastic, because what it does that we didn't get the opportunity to, I think dad would have definitely done it much more easily if he knew there wasn't a commitment. And
Right.
I said, Dad, it's a month-to-month thing. first
Right.
of all. So, but back in the day, I believe it actually was, I want to say it was, well, maybe not, but I was going to say it was a contract. It felt like it was maybe longer than a month-to-month contract. But
Could
again,
have been.
yeah, a long time ago. So the other aspect, just to be clear, we use the word respite a lot in the industry. And I want to be clear, what that really means is it's a break from for the caregiver. It's a
Right.
way for the caregiver. So I have one client right now who is at the end of her rope. And I said, well, why don't we do a respite stay, or, you know, the trial period for your spouse, and see how that goes. And she's like, I've got to learn how to deal with this. And I said, yeah, that's a different topic. But, and that's true, right? Because there's a lot of mental, emotional, physical issues that come with letting go of someone to have them live someplace else, whether it's your parent or your spouse. It's hard to live separately. Like my dad refused to do it. So I think it's really important to have a program like that, and the flexibility that you provide, because I can tell you, I haven't heard that from any place else in the country that has that type of program where you can truly across the board, whether it's independent,
Right.
assisted, or memory care. So kudos to Koelsch for doing that. One other question for you is, if when we talk about moving in, one of the steps is a clinical assessment. And that
Yes.
can scare adult children or spouses. It's like, why is it a clinical assessment? So what actually happens there? So maybe we can, as caregivers, maybe gently introduce the concept of what you're evaluating for.
Yeah, and the clinical assessments are of no charge. It doesn't, it's not of any commitment. It just, if you are looking and you think you are wanting to go in the direction of one of our communities, we will send a nurse, a clinical licensed nurse out to the home, or wherever you'd like us to go. And we can come out, and it's a very in-depth intake assessment clinical process, which will give you feedback so you understand, where is mom or dad going to fit in our community? Where do they, where's their level of care fitting in with all of the other residents? And is it going to be a good fit? And then that way we get to know who your loved one is and say, oh my gosh, I think Beverly's going to go do really well with May. And, we've got Judy, and these they were all teachers, and we found out that they have commonalities, and they really have a lot of the same similarities. So we see some friendships coming into the future, into play. But the clinical assessment, I mean, it goes over communication, ambulation. It goes over all activities of daily living. What can they do for themselves, and what are they needing assistance in? Are they having issues with bladder control, bowel control? Do we need to be assisting with those types of things? Showering assistance in memory care, that is one thing that is so complicated. I can't get mom to shower. The lady that I just met with yesterday that's bringing her mom, she said, mom hasn't had a shower since January 4th. And I said, we will get her showered next week. The day she comes in, we'll get her showered. Trust me, we will. And we've got ways of how to do it. So she was super excited about that. The cognitive ability, their mental and emotional state, and also really getting a history of who they are. Has there been any, big tragedies going on in their life, or have they had some, loss of a child, loss of a spouse, any sort of, diseases that they've had, things like that. Behavioral, physical, and verbal. We go over all the medication services, injections if they're diabetic. We're able to do insulin and sliding scale because we have the licensed nurses on site. So we really want to find out, do they need to be, if they are diabetic, we do a great job because we can do insulin checks. We can do the blood sugar checks 3 and 4 times a day, and the sliding scale. So the injections are, if we need to monitor all of that. And then treatments, what does their skin integrity look like? Is there skin breakdown? Do they need to be, do we need to put barrier cream on certain areas? Are they having lower extremity edema? Do we need to be putting on the TED hose daily, which often a lot of our folks have congestive heart failure. It's very common, and they need those TED hose and their legs elevated. And then, of course, the last is safety and supervision. And of course, in every one of these these categories. It's long. It has lots of questions with each category. So it's pretty in-depth, but this is just kind of our snapshot look assessment that will give you a good idea. And then we take it and we put it in our very clinical, online. We've got a really good August Health system that really breaks everything down and gets very, very detailed. So then okay, mom is appropriate for this, and mom would do well in this type of setting. And these are where we can help. These are the areas that we can help her with.
Yeah, that's fantastic and very comprehensive. And ultimately, it shouldn't be a 15-minute assessment where
No.
it's like, okay,
it's at least half an hour, if not an hour. It really
Yeah.
depends on what clinical things are going on. I
Mhm.
mean, you and I talked earlier this week, somebody had, there was, I think oxygen in a colostomy bag, was, status post-stroke, CVA. I mean, those are things that, there's a lot more going on clinically that is going to require a lot more questions and a lot more detailed information that's going to be needed.
Exactly. And care, right?
And care.
And I
Oh,
think,
absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
one of the things that you have to watch for too is that clinical assessment helps everybody understand the situation and the level of care required, because I have spousal clients who are like, nobody can do this right. Only I can do it. And it's like, yeah,
Right.
and it's killing you doing it. So we need to fix that so that you can have a life. It's not that you don't love him or her, but you're killing yourself.
Yeah.
And you're going to go before he does. And then what's going to happen? He's going to be alone. He's still going to end up in the same place where he should have been in the first place. So let's just avoid all the drama, keep you both happy, and take good care of you. And so I think that's a really important reassurance to all family members that we do the assessment to find out what level of care you need. And then we match our community care to the individual, versus just saying, oh, just pick from our menu. And or worse yet, we've got this, don't worry about it. It's like, well, nobody believes you. So
Well, we too, Pam, oftentimes, we'll just triage, I have people that call me and say, can you go evaluate this client or my mom? And I'll go out I'll go out with a nurse will go out, and we'll come back as a team and say, this lady, I think, is really going to do better at our Scottsdale location.
Yeah.
Because she's really pretty high functioning. I've got, like I said, I use the teacher analogy because I have a lady that just moved in that's a teacher. I have a lot of teachers in Scottsdale, lady teachers. So that was going to be a really good fit for her, versus, somebody might be, maybe there's something else going on, and they may be, with these types of residents, because you're fitting the community, the residents with the residents.
Right.
And so we do that too.
Yeah.
If families are up to it, if they want to do the drive, and like you always say, hey, driving for care is paramount. If you get good
Absolutely.
care, it's worth
You're
the
not
drive.
picking the closest community. You're picking the people in the building, whether that's the residents or the care and the staff, because that's going to make the difference in everyone's lives. So, well, listen, we are running a little bit over. We missed some of our questions. So I'm just saying that, now we're ready for next month. So next month, our next presentation is so we're trying to do these on the 4th Thursday of the month. And so that would be February 22nd. So please mark your calendars. I will be sending out an invitation with a registration link. And yes, you do need to register. We will be sending out shortly the recording so that you can share it with your residents, and if you're part of a community, or share it with your family, or just rewatch it because you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
We enjoyed having you.
Yes, and we enjoyed having you. And if you have any additional questions, please reach out to either Paige. She has her email address in the chat. It's pfg@koelschsenior.com, right? And then I'm at Pam at it's not that simple, isn't that the truth.com. And so thank you so much for coming, and we will close out now, but appreciate seeing you and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Pam.